Hey, what's going on? How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Uh, more to quarantine life. Um, just sitting in the home office doing some work. And in the last video we did, somebody asked me a question. Um, and I was thinking about the question a lot, and it made me want to do a follow up video because the question, I don't think I answered it correctly. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, that's a pretty good question. That is not a bad question at all. Gonna wait for people to come into the room, comment, like, subscribe. In the meantime, the usual. Let me set up the banners and all that good stuff. In the meantime, let me let the family know that we are live streaming. I'm Barack Obama, and I like that very much. This time of crisis. Sorry. Let's give them time. Let the room pack up. But this broadcast is going to be called the Influencer Bubble. Because I think it's an important thing to understand. Bear with me. I'm just tweeting to let the family know that we are. All right. So, yeah. Like, comment, subscribe. Hope everybody's doing okay. Hope everyone is chilling. Hoping everyone is enjoying their quarantine. I've been watching a crap ton of movies. One of the things that we talk about a lot is should I wait for more people? There's not a lot of people here now. Oh, screw it. People can catch up. One of the things that we talk about a lot is this influencer industrial complex. And it's become like a matter of fascination for me because the way I've been thinking about it, right? It's become the way for everything to operate. And not even just like media, but just everything. Like people are hiring faculty in universities now based on if you're an influencer, like your academics are trying to get followings, journalists have to be influencers, law firms are hiring people based on being influencers, and you still kind of have to have a skill set, but sometimes you can not even be qualified for jobs sometimes, and they'll train you on the job. They just want your eyeballs. Everything is about eyeballs. Everything is about spectacle. We get spectacle, we'll get eyeballs. If we get eyeballs, the money will come eventually. But people just don't really know what to do anymore, right? Now, what somebody asked me is, and I thought this was a good question: why are people paying for this stuff? Why are people spending money like corporations, like in the other examples, Marvel? Why are they doing this stuff? And what I think is happening, right? I think there's an actual bubble. And I think, like with any bubble, we're probably going to get a crash. And what I mean by that is if you look back in the days of the dot com boom, the first one, the web 1.0, one of the big things that used to happen when the first dot com boom happened was that that was the first time where spectacle and eyeballs really trumped everything else. And what I mean by that, by spectacle and eyeballs trumping everything else, the dot com boom was when businesses were doing IPOs on stocks, and it was the first time where there were no profits on a wide scale. All market fundamentals and business company fundamentals were out the window, but these stocks were still making a ton of money. Every new IPO that came out, people would just start buying it again. And people started asking, what is going on here? Like we take it for granted now. Like the Silicon Valley spectacle over substance mindset and potential over actuality mindset is now the new normal. But at the time, all like the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, Kiplinger's, all these magazines were like, when is Amazon going to make money? When is this company going to make money? When is X company going to make money? When is eBay going to make money? How long are we supposed to just accept that buzz or market dominance is going to trump market fundamentals? And Amazon was a big example. Everyone was calling it voodoo economics and calling it all this stuff. Like what is this even about? What are we working with here? And everyone just kept saying, don't worry, pets.com, AOL, all this stuff. It doesn't have to make money. It's the future, it's technology, it's progress, and just get in on the ground floor, and the money will come later. Like, build it and they will come. Build it and the profits will come. And a lot of people were just like, this is insane. But because everyone else kept buying into it, the stock prices were going up. And then even if you were a non-believer, you just kind of had to jump in too, because you're like, I can't leave all this money on the table. Plus, what if they're right? They're starting to seem right. The prices keep going up. And then, the dot-com boom busted. A couple of companies survived. It took a long time for Amazon to eventually make profits, but it eventually did. But even after the dot-com boom busted, what happened, and this is what happens with a lot of things. Sometimes things can be what I call successful failures. They technically fail, but the mindset or the new paradigm shift in thinking has become normalized. So even though it technically failed, what it left behind is an Overton window shift. The window shifts to like a new normal. So if you notice, even if the dot-com boom, the first wave, fell, Silicon Valley won in that they still managed to normalize through the handful of remaining successes the idea of you don't need to make a profit now to be a profitable, I mean, to be a hot company, to be a company that grows. People like it's normal now to invest on things based on eyeballs, buzz, and faith that those eyeballs and buzz will translate to money in the future. And like with most things, people kind of focus on the few successes over the majority of failures. People will hold out for the next Amazon and ignore the hundreds of other companies that fell off in the dot-com bust aftermath. Because all they see is what they missed out on if they would have invested in those type of things. So, like, you see with social media companies like Facebook and Twitter, it's like, hey, Twitter's a paradigm shift. Everybody's on it. It's a huge cultural force. So the stock must eventually be going to make money. Facebook, people bought it on faith. It didn't really turn a profit. A lot of things don't even have a way of making money. Twitter didn't even have a way of making money yet, but it just had a ton of eyeballs in theory, and it was part of the cultural discourse. People just bought it and just had faith that they would figure out some way to translate it into eyeballs, right? So it's Silicon Valley is kind of the impetus for all this stuff. But one thing that um, makes this type of thinking way easier to do is when things are already going good. When things are going well, you can tolerate this stuff more. When things are going well, you don't really, when things are going well, you don't need to make a lot of this stuff work. Uh, you can afford to um, ignore fundamentals, right? So when the economy tanked, it brought down all this stuff with it because now people don't have the luxury to buy things on faith or throw money at things. Like one of the ways these people make money, an example is Vice magazine. Vice magazine wasn't technically a tech company. Same with WeWork. WeWork wasn't a tech company, but they acted like tech companies. Like Vice magazine was like, hey, we have the youth market, we have the eyeballs of the hip, edgy youth. Even though they really didn't, they were constantly lying. And Gavin McInnes and Shane Davis were constantly scamming investors, right? But what they would do is they would just keep getting a new round of investment from a new bunch of people, signing deals with MTV, signing deals with HBO, doing all this stuff on the hope that eventually they're going to make money. But let's just keep selling people on faith that we're going to we have no place to go but up because we have our we have our market, we have our base, we have the buzz, you know. So they did a lot of stunts, a lot of buzz, a lot of spectacle. No, and the hope was that eventually the spectacle is going to lead into something real. You know, who knows how we're going to actually make the money? You know, sell ads, do whatever, but eventually something is going to happen, right? So what basically happened was Vice's deals ended up having diminishing returns because they just ran out of people to scam. It's the same thing that happened with Theranos. Theranos didn't even have a real machine in their possession. They didn't have an actual machine that worked, but um, Elizabeth Holmes kept using her personality and charisma. She was like an influencer. She kept using her personality and charisma to get into rooms and charm people and swindle money out of people. But if you notice all these things, they eventually bust. They're like Bernie Madoff schemes where you can't keep it going forever. Eventually, you're going to have to deliver, right? You're going to have to deliver eventually. You can't just keep doing this. You can only fool people for so long. So one thing that accelerates all this stuff is when markets go down. When markets go down, people have less frivolous money to throw around. You know, like when you're making a ton of money, you can invest in all types of long shots or vanity projects, or let your dreamer side just take over and think, wow, this flashy thing that you promise is going to cure all this stuff looks cool, or this being on the ground floor of a hipster scene, you know, with Vice, this sounds cool. And then the economy tanks, all your stuff drops, you're not making money, you're doing badly. The people that you owe money to are breathing down your door because they're hurting. You have to start looking at the things you're investing in as a venture capitalist and start saying, okay, guys, I'm going to need you guys to deliver. People are beating down my door. So now I'm beating down your door. Or, you know, the money's not flowing the way it is because the traditional stuff that we used to make money on, that we used to trust, you know, isn't making money. And now we have to look at all our investments. We can't think about long shots anymore. And that's how a lot of things end up going down the tubes. A lot of these vanity projects, a lot of these vanity projects, a lot of these social justice things, a lot of these influencer things. So with Corona wreaking havoc, the way it's wreaking havoc with oil, going down the tubes. When oil goes down the tubes, it brings down the market with it. There's a lot of industries that indirectly rely on oil. So right now in oil, there's a huge price war with Russia, OPEC, and America all going at each other's throats. And Russia was cooperating with OPEC for a while, but after a while, Russia was like, "F you, we're sick of this. We want to crush everything." Right now, Russia and Putin are in this accelerationist stance where they're just like, "We want to just drive everybody into the ground and cause this disinformation, and we want to crush the American oil market. That's when we want to hurt America, and we don't care. And we're sick of playing games with you, OPEC. You don't have the heart for this. You don't have the balls for this, and you don't know what you're doing. We're gonna crush America." So right now, OPEC and Russia aren't cooperating. America doesn't have the power it used to stop this stuff. So oil's going down the tanks. It's gonna maybe go under $20 a barrel soon. The Dow is going down the tank. Now the coronavirus has hit like at the worst time. What I'm thinking is the reason why a lot of this stuff is getting bought and sold. Like in the case of Marvel with those two recent videos I did, the MCU is making like a crap ton of money. The movies. So like what do they really care? But right now, coronavirus, movies are looking tough. A lot of movies that were supposed to be hits are either getting postponed or canceled. If a lot of people lose their jobs, they're thinking unemployment is going to hit like 30%. A lot of people aren't going to have disposable income to just spend 10, 12, $15 if you're in a place like New York on the movies. They're just not. So I expect a lot of theater budgets, a lot of these type of budgets are going to be going down. A lot of can't miss movies are not going to be making profits because they spent big on these movies expecting to release them into a strong economy. Like when you spend like hundreds of millions of dollars or close to half a billion on your movie and then you release it into a down market, where people are just not going to spend money like that. It's like good luck recouping that. What I'm thinking is a lot of things are going to there's going to be a lot less room for stuff. There's going to be a lot less room for just hiring influencers, hiring people who can't deliver, having vanity projects based on ideology because people, especially rich people, they all want to make money. They all want to make profit, but because people like me and you, the average person, we don't have a ton of money. We think money would solve all our problems, but when you've been born into money or when you've had money for a while, you'd be surprised how much rich people get bored with that. Like that's why that's why Bill Gates is always doing these foundations and charities. He barely occupies himself with business anymore. All he thinks about is his legacy. He's doing all these causes, these charities. Warren Buffett. Um, once you have the money, you start thinking about your legacy, your influence, ideology. That's why billionaires like Trump or like Bloomberg. Bloomberg is like one of the richest men ever. Why does he want to be president? Why is he spending 7/10 of a billion on a campaign? It's like, when you don't have money, you think money is like everything. All you think is about is how you'd floss and fly to a bunch of islands. But people with money do think about more than money, even though people stereotype capitalism as just being about the bottom line. A lot of people actually lose money sometimes just to get a point across. And you see that with white supremacy. White supremacy, a lot of times, like look at police stations and the police state. Think about how much easier it would be to just stop a lot of police racism, right? They spend millions of dollars on settlements with people. All these cases where they don't prosecute the person, they still spend millions of dollars on these people. Sometimes some of these cops have had like 6, 7 previous cases that the city had to settle. You would think it's actually more profitable to just actually prosecute and fire 30 cops. But white supremacy means a lot to them. Like governments, corporations, billionaires, a lot of times when their money or their power is right, they have room to start losing money in the idea of legacy and influence and spreading of ideas and having legacies. So you can't always think in the terms of rationality or profits with people. A lot of times people will do all types of counterproductive stuff, but what I'm saying is I think there's going to be a lot less room in times of crisis, which is going what we're heading into, with this perfect storm of coronavirus, oil, the Dow Jones, Russia not playing ball with people. And yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Persona Management said it broke my heart that you said you were friends with the cop on the last episode twice. I was about to be a patron, but I don't know if I can listen to you anymore. Well, hey, I mean, I can't tell you what to do, but I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm from a blue collar background, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people from a blue collar background become cops. You, I don't think it's even that rare a thing. It's it's it happens. Like I have had friends that I grew up with who they're like, "You're going to school, you're getting all these loans, but I can't afford to do that." And I, I don't like cops, but this thing is paying money. I'm going to get benefits. This is the only way I can see to start a family, and that's what they did. And it's kind of tough because, like, what do you do? Do you just say, "Hey, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore because you became a cop"? It's it is what it is. But I mean, I have family that even became cops. Some of them went to school and they couldn't even pay off their loans. Like my one friend, he went to college and became a graphic designer, went to a bunch of loans, and then this is one friend of mine, and all he was getting hired for were freelance gigs. That's all he was getting, and even those were drying up because he was saying everybody where he would go started thinking with Photoshop and all these companies, they not just think they can hire an intern and just throw graphic design on that person's plate of stuff to do. You know what I'm saying? So now they don't even want to hire actual graphic designers anymore. And you see it in a lot of posters and movie posters that come out now. You see like a lot of really, really crappy graphic design coming out. It's because they don't want to hire real graphic designers and stuff. So he eventually said, "Look, I gotta pay these loans off somehow. I'm gonna do whatever." So he ended up becoming a cop, uh, wreck, uh, racking up his overtime, doing what he has to do, and to him, it's just a job. But one thing I kind of noticed, right? Like a lot of people have these really strident views on these things, as far as like, I can't be friends with a cop or stuff like that. What I kind of find is a lot of times they're not really from a blue collar or whatever type of background, because even like in those like mafia people and stuff like that who grew up like in those poor Italian neighborhoods, a lot of the people who didn't go into the mob would end up becoming cops. It didn't mean they like the cops, but people they know ended up becoming cops because people want to get out of poverty or whatever any way any way they can. You know what I'm saying? So I find like a lot of times, a lot of these people who have these real hardcore views, they're kind of, a lot of times they're not from, they're like a lot of these like white socialists, kind of armchair revolutionary types that they're on some traitor to my class kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like they that's not really going to be the reality anyway. So people they grew up with are not really going to ever end up in those situations to begin with. That's not really where they're from. That's not really the people they know. But I mean, if you're black and you're blue collar or poor, a lot of people you know are gonna end up going into the police, going into the military. Some of them are gonna be related to you. And do you just cut them all off? Like the way I look at it is if you're going to join like ICE, if you're going to become a cop and you're going to rack up a bunch of cases of police brutality and things like that, then yeah, I think you got to take a principled stand and cut people off. But if I can't give you any solutions as to how to make a family, as to how to pay off your loans, you know, if I can't give you any options, I'm not going to cut you off if you're my family, my friends, for becoming a cop or joining the military or whatever. You know, I mean, as long as I think you're just doing it as a job and you're not doing it to be whatever, but at the end of the day, your family is your family. And the people you grow up with are the people you grow up with. And that's got to be that's got to be what's got to be. But if you can have friends and have family who go into that, you know, and you can cut them off, then more power to you. You know what I'm saying? More power to you. If you can live by those principles and you set that code for yourself and you do it, then so be it. But the one thing I don't like when people try to hold the patron thing as like leverage. Like, don't bring that up. That's kind of tacky. Like the whole thing about, oh, I was gonna be a patron. Like, I mean, dude, don't do that. That's tacky. Like, I'm not gonna shake in my boots over the $5, especially if you haven't even spent the money yet. Like you know, if you haven't actually um given the money yet, so you haven't even shown me, hey, you know, I've been spending the money, you know, like because I feel like a lot of times if someone was gonna spend the money, they're gonna spend it by now. You know, like just kind of say your piece and just say your piece, you know. But yeah, I always hate that. I was gonna give you money, you know, like you're taking a $5 bill and like dangling it like you know, like a carrot on a stick and it's supposed to jump around. You know what I'm saying? Like that's I really don't like that because I'm a pretty chill dude. I will talk to you about anything. You know what I'm saying? Like I will shoot the shit with you about anything. But I'm too old. I'm too tired to be shaking my boots over $5. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like I said, if finding out that I had a cop friend, you know, somebody I grew up to became a cop, or a family member who became a cop, is a deal breaker for you, by all means, don't don't listen. You know, so I respect that. I respect that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I'm gonna tell you right now, if I am down on my luck or I'm in trouble, um, my cousin who's a cop is gonna take care of me and come over and see if I'm okay and make sure my family's okay and check on my mom. Some dude who's subscribing to my Patreon is not, especially some dude who is dangling $5, you know, like to hold my views hostage. Like I can't really depend on you even for $5. You know what I'm saying? like, like I can't. Like, what are you gonna do for me if I'm in trouble? The choice is easy for me. Um, yeah. So anyway, what are we talking about? Um, when one of the things we were talking about, I'm just trying to get my train of thought now. One of the things that we were talking about is how when things go wrong, a lot of things are going to collapse. And I think this influencer thing is going to collapse, including this social justice um, influencer thing. And I was thinking of a particular example, right? Um, trying to find a particular article. Okay, here we go. I found the article. Let me just put it on the screen. Oh, persona manager said goodbye, and I seriously. Oh, so the person who was mad about the friend being a cop thing said goodbye and keep trying to make. He's gonna keep trying to make the world a better place. I hope you're right. I hope he can make the world a better place. You know what I'm saying? More power to you. I wish you all the best with that. But there was this article that came out, and I'm putting it up now, right? And I thought this article was pretty interesting. And this guy got a lot of grief for this article. He was called a racist, and I think he might actually be a racist, to be honest. Who knows? Because he's working at the New York Post. I think he might be a conservative. But sometimes the conservative person, the racist person, might be right. Sometimes a clock is right twice. A broken clock is right twice a day. And sometimes you have to kind of count on the right wing or the reactionary people to actually tell the truth on something, because sometimes they're the only ones who are willing to do it, even if they're telling the truth for the wrong reasons or they're right for the wrong reasons. And he had this article. Um, Let me get this ad out the way. He had this article. Slave play may be provocative, but it sure isn't selling tickets. His name is Michael Rydell, right? And it says here sources say the 3.5 million slave play has sold only $800,000 worth of heavily discounted tickets and is on track to lose a substantial amount of money during previews. Its producers have been reportedly scouring Schubert Alley for money, though a spokesperson says the show was fully capitalized. Rival producers say that unless there is a boom at the box office, Slave Play could close before the end of its 17-week run. Once upon a time, the Times could make or break a play. Frank Rich certainly made Tony Kushner and Angels in America part of the cultural conversation in 1993. Critics simply don't have that kind of power anymore, nor does the paper's once influential arts and leisure section. If you had a story in the Times Art and Leisure, you were guaranteed to sell a few 100,000 in tickets as a press agent. It doesn't move the needle anymore. And that's one of the things that I was trying to say before about how people are asking, why do these people hire these people, these influencers? And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, the Times, yeah, the Times can't make or break a play anymore. The Times and mainstream media used to have a lot of power. You can just buy a lot of ads and make and break things. But now people are too scattered. They're into a bunch of media. People are reading blogs, reading their Facebook feeds. They're creating these filter bubbles. One thing with the internet and social media is now you can create a bubble where it's just you're reading nothing but your favorite influencers. The algorithm is just feeding you influencers and blogs and YouTube videos and articles that already cater to what you want to believe. You don't have to be brainwashed by the mainstream media anymore. So the mainstream media doesn't have to pull. Like, they kind of felt that in a big way with the Trump Hillary election. The media was pulling out every single stop they could to destroy um Trump. And up until the day of the election, they thought that they did it because they were used to the old way where they didn't just have to reflect opinion, they could dictate it. Like, their coverage secretly created what it predicted. Like, the predictions were always right because just by virtue of predicting it, they would make it come true because people would think, oh, if the Times is saying this, it must be true. Therefore, I'm going to react accordingly. And it's easy to get your predictions 100% right when your predictions, by virtue of you making them, makes people act like the prediction. You see what I'm saying? So in the old days when the Times said this person is cooked, they have no way of winning. Everyone's going to vote for this person instead. A lot of people reading would be like, well, I don't want to back a dog in this race. I don't want to back a lame duck. So if everyone else is really saying this person is cooked and this other person is the way to go, then I guess I'm going to follow suit. You know what I mean? And it's not like that anymore because now um a lot of people have a filter bubble where they won't even see your Times article, or what they'll see is they'll see your Times article filtered through 5 or 10 um right-wing YouTube videos calling the article bullshit, or um they'll only hear of the article through Rush Limbaugh or conservative talk radio, and they'll be exposed to the article with the built-in talking points against the article at the same time. So media doesn't have the influence, old media doesn't have the influence that it used to have, which is one of the reasons why they get in a state of desperation enough to chase these influencers in their eyeballs, because they think, okay, um, since since the big media doesn't have the clout anymore, it doesn't move the eyeballs, can't reach the people where they are, um, even the day, even up to the day of the election, New York Times live election progress ticker had Hillary winning for like 3 quarters of the day. And at the very end, the ticker switched around as enough real world results came in to flip it the other way. Now, now, what happened was um, Trump won. A lot of the old ideas were exposed, and I think that kind of made the culture wars even tick up higher on the influencer level. You know what I'm saying? Where now everyone started chasing influencers even more, and you started seeing how a lot of even mainstream liberal or left wing uh, publications and stuff were starting to try to chase um, white working class or populist influencers. They started trying to hire the New York Times section started filling this op-ed full of all these types of questionable right wing people. He almost hired Kevin Williamson, who was like a right wing guy who says a lot of messed up stuff, and enough backlash happened that didn't happen. But to go back to this article, right? It talks about slave play, because the guy who wrote Slave Play, I think, is really an influencer more than he is really a serious playwright. He's very internet savvy. He's like Lil Nas X in that respect, right? Um, so it says, if you had a story in the Times, Art and Leisure, you were guaranteed to sell a few 100,000 in tickets, says a press agent. It doesn't move the needle anymore. Slave Play moved to Broadway with the knowledge it would have the full backing of the Times, as a producer unrelated to the show. But that's not a good enough reason anymore, right? So this influence, so it had all this Times support, and that's not really the case, right? It didn't really make a difference. This is the key part. It says the play's producers may be counting on Harris's social media following. He has more than 35,000 Instagram followers, and that of his cast, to sell tickets. That too may be a miscalculation. Now, what's interesting is at the time of this article, he had 35,000 Instagram followers, right? Now he has 55,000. So, what's interesting is, and this is what I think is really interesting, the play ended up flopping. So, he didn't net the investors or the institution any money despite all his buzz, but he almost doubled his follower count. And his Twitter followers probably jumped up even more. His Twitter followers are probably insane right now. So what ended up happening, I think, is what happens with most of these influencers is um like I think what ends up happening is these people end up building their own clout more than they actually end up making other people money. So based on this circular logic, right? They get him because he's an influencer and he has 35,000 followers. Boom, you hire him. He doesn't get you a profit, even though he gets you a lot of buzz and a lot of eyeballs and a lot of talk. Harry Styles, Lena Waithe attended it. Jake Gyllenhaal uh, got caught up in the hype and became a producer. Rihanna showed up, and you get all these celebrities. Madonna showed up. Um, what happens is he gets bigger. He becomes bigger as a result. He now has like 20,000 more followers. You're in the hole a bunch of money that you lost. But now because he has more followers, people who follow the same logic are not going to hire him even more because they're going to be like, oh, now he has 55,000 followers. Let's hire him for something else now because now he even has more people. So they're going to keep chasing the same circular stuff. When they hire him for the bigger thing now, that thing will flop. It'll get a lot of buzz. There'll get a lot of controversy. There'll be a lot of edginess and nudity and hot button social media talking points. That new venture will flop, but now he'll have 100,000 followers. Then someone else will hire him based on something because of that. Um, that's gonna be what ends up happening. So his producers may be counting on Harris's social media following. He has more than 35,000 Instagram followers, and that of his cast to sell tickets. That too may be a miscalculation. Social media is completely overrated as a driver of ticket sales, says a veteran producer. The kids think if they have thousands of followers on Twitter, everybody will come see their show. Doesn't happen. Case in point, Be More Chill creator Joe Iconis has more than 52,000 Instagram followers. His show lasted barely 6 months on Broadway, right? Um, so he goes, theater critics tend to like all this stuff about sexuality, identity politics, racism, oppression, and white supremacy. To them, it's quote unquote provocative, a quote unquote urgent conversation. And that's true. So you'll get a ton of critics writing about this stuff, and you'll think the stuff is making way more money than it does. Um, you make a big buzz. Someone like Jake Gyllenhaal, he does a lot of blockbuster stuff like Prince of Persia and things like that, and money grabs. And as an actor, and you're doing good for yourself and whatever, there's a part of you that wants to be taken seriously as well. Like, he's this Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm sure he had a good paycheck for that. But the same way Bill Gates, because a billionaire, but he also wants to have the Bill Gates Foundation, or Bloomberg is filthy rich, but he wants to become president. Like, a lot of people, when their money is handled, then they start caring about what about my legacy? What about my um I want to be seen as intellectual. I want to have my comfort is covered. Now I want to worry about my influence, my ideas. I want to have a be part of something historic, be part of something provocative. You know what I'm saying? So someone like so just like Bill Gates or Bloomberg will be involved in stuff like that. Someone like Jake Gyllenhaal will be like, I want to be part of on the ground floor of this quote unquote provocative or conversation starter slave play. Now, if Jake Gyllenhaal's money is not good, if Hollywood is in a big slump, if he gets in a slump, is he going to be wasting his time on investing or being part of things like slave play? I say not, and that's why I mean by part of the influencer bubble. Like, people kind of want to have need to have money to waste and blow to invest in stuff like this. Just like the overall economy has to be really good in order for the first dot-com bubble to work. When same with the real estate bubble, the first one, when the economy was doing really good and money was flush, they were giving out subprime mortgages left and right. You could like be in a shitty place in your life and land a mortgage and stuff. But when the economy tanked and they had to collect their money, they lost a lot of money and they got really tight with mortgages and credit. And to this day, it's really tough to get real estate is still reeling from that, and it's really tough to get risky mortgages since then. And when you're in a bubble, like the money to waste is flush, and people will do counterproductive things all the time, right? So yeah, so these vanity projects are not going to last. They're not going to continue. So I think if Marvel's movie business takes a big hit, they're going to start caring more what the comic book wing is doing. And they're going to be like, look, we were letting you guys dick around and lose money and create buzz and whatever. But now we have to look at the bottom line and figure out what's going on. Like you see, for example, with DC Comics, had this guy called Dan Didio who was just dicking around all the time and failing upwards with doing horrible stunts all the time. But like Time Warner just didn't have time anymore. AT&T bought Time Warner. The comics are like 0.2% of the business, and Warner Brothers has been losing money, and that guy just got fired. Like they're like this publishing wing. We have to cut the fat somewhere, and either you guys get in shape or ship out, or we're gonna get someone else to manage it. Like their their entertainment side wasn't doing as well as Disney was doing, so they kind of had to tighten the ship first, right? And if Marvel starts getting in trouble, if Disney starts getting into trouble, um, Star Wars is already basically a $4 billion waste of money. They bought the property and they drove it into the ground. They were using a bunch of influencers there and using social justice influencing to market those things. And now it's just like all the goodwill is gone. You know what I'm saying? And if Marvel starts following suit, with the economy going down in the tubes and everything, we're gonna see. But basically, when this guy did this article, right, this New York Post guy, when he did the article, he got into a shit ton of grief. And Jeremy O'Harris, the guy behind Slave Play, was talking about how the guy was a racist and conservative and was, bashing the guy and saying it was a bunch of junk. And then myself and other people were posting and reposting the article and tweeting about it and saying, "Hey, it looks like Slave Play is junk. It looks like it's not making the money." And then Jeremy O'Harris got in my mentions on Twitter and was like, "Can't believe everything you read." And he mentioned me on Hot 97. He was like, some Hotep was, you know, bad mouthing the play, and these people don't know what they're talking about. He didn't say me by name, but he was referring to me and talking about my thread, because I made this whole thread about how I think the thing's not going to make money. I just don't think it's going to make money. I think this guy is right. What he's saying makes sense. And then lo and behold, Jeremy O'Hara starts announcing that the thing has capacity seating, it's filled to capacity with the seating. Then he announces that it got an extension. Like, now, so he was kind of implying, hey, this guy was wrong. Because if you remember what I said, the guy said that it looks like it's not going to finish its 17-week run, right? Because it's doing so badly that it might not even make it to the end of a 17 run. So he was like, look, uh, thanks to everybody for the congratulations. It looks like we got an extension all the way through to January or February, whenever it was. And we have capacity seating. So I was like, whoa, was I wrong? I started getting gaslit. I started thinking, wait, maybe I'm the crazy one. Like, maybe this buzz really does work. Like, I felt myself getting gaslit, and I kind of doubted. And I started thinking, there's no way they're going to extend the run of something that's losing money, right? No way. It's got to be making money. It's got to be. So maybe I was wrong. So I'm like, shit. I ate I ate crow. Somebody called I Sound Info said, I think the decades long tech bubble might indicate that with enough commitment to a bubble, that with enough commitment, a bubble can essentially become a feature of the system. Yeah, I actually said that up top, probably before you came in, but I was saying that when the first dot-com bubble crashed, a lot of people thought, oh, the dot-com bubble must have lost, because look, it crashed. But what I was saying was, it was one of those things that even in losing, it won, because even though it technically lost that first time, it normalized the idea of a company becoming big without ever having to prove that it can make profits, or it validated the idea, normalized the idea that it's cool to keep investing on a company and growing its valuation just based on its potential and buzz. No, I saw info. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to apologize, because it's worth repeating. And I like to hear you say it, because it makes me feel like I'm on the right track when someone else independently comes to the same idea. And you find there are a lot of things. Like I'll give you another example of things that seem to fail on the surface, but actually won because they normalize things. When Barry Goldwater ran for president, right? When Barry Goldwater ran for president, and he failed, and he whatever, that failure, even though it lost, the conservative movement that it galvanized, that grassroots conservative movement that galvanized, didn't go away. And that current was now out there, and it ended up succeeding in Ronald Reagan later. Like, it started something that didn't go away, that kept growing. And another example is Occupy Wall Street. Like, people, when Occupy Wall Street first came out, it lasted for a couple of months, then it disappeared, and a lot of people were laughing at it and calling it a failure. But the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders movements, the fact that Bernie Sanders was even viable 2 elections in a row with the whole mainstream Democratic Party um, against him, that he was even able to get this for it. That so many people are talking about Medicare for all as a serious talking point and stuff. That kind of shows that even in supposedly losing, Occupy Wall Street seeded enough of this sentiment into, and normalized enough of this sentiment into the political ether, that it took root, became a seed, and grew. And we're still contending to it today. It's a loss, short-term loss, that was ultimately like a win, because it created a cultural shift. Now, iSound Info said, so then why do you think the influencer bubble would be different? And I don't think it is going to be different. What I think is going to go through a short-term booms and busts. And a few people who are big are going to survive it. Like I'll give you an example. People look at things that survived the first dot-com bubble, and they're now blue chip companies today, like Amazon and different things. And those few successes power through the next coming dot-com booms, or the next wave of stuff. Like, when people keep investing in Twitter or Facebook, on the idea that it has too many eyeballs to fail, it's going to have to make money, whatever, what pushes them through that logic is looking at the survivors of the first dot-com boom. People don't remember all the pets.coms and all the things that tanked. People don't remember that Time Warner bought AOL based on that same logic, and basically did the biggest influencer hustle ever. Like, um they basically got they basically washed themselves. Like, it was there's whole books and documentaries written about falling for the hype. Like, AOL is like the hugest thing. It has a bunch of eyeballs, and if we get access to those eyeballs, if us, Time Warner, merges with AOL, we don't know how yet, but we're gonna destroy the industry in a good way and dominate. And people don't remember that. People just remember what won, like, and they're free to repeat the same mistakes. So I think in the long run, I think the Overton window of culture, everything is shifting enough that influencers will remain normalized as each influencer bubble busts. It's gonna, even as they bust, they're still going to shift the window enough that they're going to be here to stay, even if there'll be less of them at a time in the wake of a bust. Like, like in the first dot-com boom, there was like, you threw a rock, and any direction. And there was somebody working for a dot-com company. When the first dot-com company busted, a lot of it shrunk, you know, but that type of valuation, that type of Silicon Valley voodoo economics was now normalized, even if the field was smaller until it grows again. Like the pool of influencers will shrink, but it's going to become more normalized. And then when the next boom happens, it'll grow again. So I think it won't be different. I think it will be the same. I think the short term booms and busts will come, but in the meantime, things will get normalized, like you said. I sound info, but the thing that was interesting was I got very gaslit by all this stuff that was going on with slave play. Like, I started thinking, man, I guess I really am wrong. Egg is on my face, I like I wasn't ready to give up on the whole theory, but I thought, okay, at the very least, I'm wrong about this instinct. I mean, this instance, which happens. Like, no prediction is 100% right. The exception doesn't disprove the rule, right? But the New York Times, in the meantime, kept pushing the same stuff. So I'll show some other articles, right? Um, hold on. So they started putting articles like this: Is Broadway ready for slave play? Risky, for sure. Triggering, possibly. A must see. Audiences are about to decide, right? So they made it seem like it's showing proof time for slave play. And this guy Michael Paulson, he's a critic who was very much into championing this thing. He and I got into arguments about it because he was saying some messed up stuff. I felt right, like and some of it was from this article, right? But he's here, and this whole thing is basically a giant press release for slave play, right? This person is clearly buying into Jeremy O'Harris's cult of personality, and so he says, he's pulling weight for this thing, and he's really trying to sell this thing. You can tell this guy is kind of really invested for some reason in this thing taking off, and I think it's part of the influencer industrial complex. Like, these journalists have to be influencers now themselves. Like I said, they have to have blue checks and have followers and be whatever. So they're invested in covering entertainers who are influencers because as critics, they understand these types of creators better, and these two can kind of grease each other's backs. I could be the influencer critic who champion your play. You can be the influencer creator who I promote. Both of us kind of rise together. That's kind of a lot of the attitude of different influencers. They kind of feel like influencers doing well anywhere makes influencers do well everywhere, and we can all rise together on this hot air balloon of nothing, of just clout and attention and eyeballs. So you have a lot of critics and media people who are basically glorified influencers, very invested in influencer media doing well, also because these type of influencers are their friends. They remind them of themselves, or they themselves eventually want to become creators. They want to become screenwriters, playwrights, infiltrate this stuff. Because one thing about being an influencer, your career is like a decoy career. You're not anchored or tethered to any one career. You use those eyeballs to just jump around to anywhere else that looks like you can make a quick buck or get quick clout from it. So, it's not strange to be a playwright who jumps into TV, jumps into movies, who writes think pieces for the Times, and vice versa. To jump from, if you notice, every um, influencer writer has multiple hustles. Like Roxane Gay writes feminist books, but she also does novels. She does comic books, and she's been petitioning to try to get a superhero movie for a long time. Um, so if any type of influencer making it in movies and plays happens, that helps it for the influencer journalists to eventually get that lane left open for themselves later on. When they try to sell their own book and whatever. And plus, that influencer person that they challenged as a creator might give them a recommendation because they appreciated when you were a critic, you helped me out. So, Jeremy or Harris might help um, one of the influencer critics when it's time for them to sell a play, get their play produced, things like that. So that's their thinking behind the whole thing. But so kind of admit that a lot of it is stunts, right? Set on the grounds of a Virginia plantation, its racially charged sex talk and simulated dominance and submission are potentially so triggering that a pre-Broadway production supplied post-show lobby counselors. An internet-based backlash, seemingly fueled by people who had not seen the play, was threatening enough to require stepped-up security and online vitriol directed at the Broadway production prompted the show's social media team to disable Facebook and Instagram comments. So, based on all this online stuff, you think, oh, wow, this thing is really, really, really um, getting a lot of buzz, a lot of attention. This is going to really move a lot of tickets and stuff. Broadway production is now in previews and scheduled to run for 17 weeks at the 800 seat John Golden Theater. The producers, a team that now includes the actor Jake Gyllenhaal, the music manager Troy Carter, and the documentary Abigail Disney, a great niece of Walt Disney, need to harness the enthusiasm and, yes, the edginess as they seek to persuade ticket buyers that they will miss out if they don't catch slave play. So what's interesting is this critic, instead of just reporting or giving his opinion, is actually actively rooting in the article for the play and is even giving them advice. Like, let me repeat this paragraph again. He's giving a prescription, not a description. He says the producers need to harness the enthusiasm and, yes, the edginess as they seek to persuade ticket buyers that they will miss out if they don't catch slave play. Then he adds, this is going to burn fast and bright and hot, predicted Greg Nobile, the 27-year-old lead producer. If you want to be part of the cultural conversation, you must see it. And yeah, so this guy was totally in a tank for it. He was mocking people online who were offended at how anti-black a lot of it was in its imagery and stuff. And Jeremy, Jeremy or Harris, Jeremy or Harris, um, Jeremy or Harris was kind of leaning into the whole thing about calling people who didn't believe what the believe in the play. He was saying that it's racist, it's lies, it's not true. He got into my replies and told me that I was wrong, and I started um believing it. I started believing the shit. I was like, wow, I guess I was wrong. I still believe in my theory, but I was wrong overall. Now, this is what was really interesting to me. Um, I did this thread later on, right? Um, Somebody who works in theater sent me a DM on Twitter. He sent me a personal message, and he said, "Just so you know, your prediction was right. Um, Slave play is flopping, and the information is actually public, but nobody talks about it." And I was like, "What does he mean? The information is public, but no one talks about it?" Because every article I'm seeing is about how it's taken over the world. It's doing so good. So I was a little taken aback. I was like, that can't be true. There's no way that can be true. And he gave me the link and he said, you just go to this website and it tells you how much how things are doing, right? And I gotta show this comment. Kilster said the writer makes it sound as if slave play were attracting Southern wrestling fans with wanting to hit with fans wanting to hit you, but we all know Harris ain't shit. Yeah, but I was like, this can't be true, and I'm going to show a thread I made about it on Twitter. So I looked and I asked around. 'Cause I just couldn't believe it, and the site is called BroadwayWorld.com, right? So I looked up, and you could tell week by week how a play is doing. And remember, I told you that Jeremy O'Harris went online and said, "Hey, uh, you know, we're at capacity every night. These people are lying about it going down the tubes. And look, we got an extension, and this guy's like racist, and see how invested people are in making this thing fail." So then I looked, right, and I asked, "Have y'all been checking on how the slave play is actually doing?" It's pretty interesting. The extension of the dates presents this idea that it was doing so well, but look at the actual sales versus capacity. Um, and I couldn't believe what I was reading correctly. So I asked people, I'm like, am I reading this correctly? Because I can't possibly be reading this correctly. Because if this was true, I would have surely would have heard about this in all the fun and coverage. But um right here, I don't know if you can see it, but um the play had a potential, right? If all the tickets were sold, potential of getting $832,000. What it actually sold through was $472,000 worth of tickets. So it was actually selling actually 50% of the available money that it could make. So if it could make potential of every ticket sold at its full price, 800,000, what it was actually getting was a little over 400,000. But the actual capacity of what it was m- selling through was 97%. So I'm like, how is it getting 97% of the capacity filled as far as seats, but only making um half of its potential money? And then that's when I realized, oh crap, this thing is actually they're giving away most of the tickets or severely discounting them. So then when he comes on and says, "Hey, we're close to capacity every night," technically he's not lying. It's bullshit. He's bullshitting without actually telling a lie. He comes on and says, "Hey, I'll have you know we're at capacity." So if someone says your show is not selling, instead of having to lie and say actually it is selling and then get busted, he says we're at capacity every night. And then he's responding to that with a truth, but the truth is not really disproving what the other person is saying. Yes, you are at capacity every night, but you're only selling 50% worth of the available money you could make. So they're they're basically comping a bunch of tickets, and probably they're comping a lot of them to celebrities because he's a big groupie. He's someone who wants to build up his clout. So I'm sure like there were probably when Madonna and Rihanna and all those people were there, I'm sure a lot of their stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if it was comp, like the people who could afford it the most, right? So anyway, basically, a lot of discounted tickets and comps led to 98% capacity, but only 56% of total sales were actually achieved. So then that first guy was actually right. The one who wrote that New York Post article that everybody got on, like all these critics, all these left wing and liberal critics and influencers in the media were all bashing that guy and clowning him, and Jeremy O'Hara's calling him a racist. But it turned out he was right all along. It wasn't selling tickets. So then the one thing he was wrong about was that it was not going to make its 17-week run. But what I think happened is these people just ate the money. They just said, look, we have to save face. The same way girls basically got canceled, but HBO had to save face. So they announced it was ending after 2 or 3 seasons. Like they basically canceled it 2 seasons in advance and made it seem like it was an organic ending, but the ratings were actually in the tank, and they just didn't want to say, "Hey, we're canceling it immediately." They did a face-saving cancel where they announced the end of the show 2 seasons ahead and claimed that it was a naturally occurring story wrapping up to kind of hide that it was a cancellation and save Lena Dunham face and save themselves face. I think they did this extension and just said, let's just milk the clout we can get out of it. Maybe get awards out of it. I think it's easier to get awards when you're not a flop. And if you extend, that helps you. Um, like let's just go full vanity project with it, right? So somebody tweeted this at me. They said extensions aren't always an indicator of sales. Often it means new investors. January is one of the toughest months for Broadway. So if they're struggling during the busiest months, I doubt they will last through the spring. So basically, they were just using the buzz, even as it wasn't selling, to just round up new investors who would be similarly dazzled by the internet.com logic of, hey, this is getting buzz. You want to get, attached to this, and you can get attached to a potential award winner, or you can get the bragging rights of saying, hey, I invested in this film or this play. To give you an example, people be surprised, right? To give you an example of how people can have a lot of money but still care about things like this. Roger Ailes, the guy behind Fox News, and he was a true conservative. He was a true believer. He was one of the biggest theater investors that there was, and he was on the ground floor of a lot of plays. People don't notice. One of the ones he was on the ground floor of was one called Hot L Baltimore, and Hot L Baltimore, for people who don't know, it was this groundbreaking play. It was like the Rent of its day, right? And this is what Hot L Baltimore was. It's a pun because it's a hotel. It's called the Hotel Baltimore, but the E is burnt out on the sign because it's such a rundown hotel. So the sign looks like Hot L Baltimore, right? And Hot L Baltimore is a play by Lanford Wilson set in the lobby of Hotel Baltimore. And the plot focuses on the residents of a decaying property who are faced with eviction when the structure is condemned. The play draws its title from the hotel's neon marquee with a burnt out E that was never replaced. And this thing was very aggressive. It had prostitutes, illegal immigrants, gay characters, and it was very much the progressive, groundbreaking play of its day. It eventually ended up becoming um, a sitcom by Norman Lear that was considered very progressive too. At one of the first uh, gay couples as regulars on a TV show or whatever, and it was like Rent, and it had a lot of fringe people and um undesirables as the main characters, and was very progressive. And its historical context is considered a very groundbreaking film. And Roger Ailes, he was a full-blown conservative at the time, was one of the people behind this thing. And to his dying day, he was very proud of it. Even after Fox News, when they asked him about it, they were like, you know, talk about your time as a theater investor. He always beamed with pride about Hot L Baltimore and how he was happy to be associated with it, to be a part of it. So you'd be surprised at who gets involved in these vanity projects or why they do it. Like, he was proud of all the plays he was part of, even the ones that flopped, because he thought it made him interesting. He wasn't a typical like conservative. He had depth, complexity. He was part of something that was groundbreaking, part of the culture. So you can see how they can kind of get extra rounds of investors when you get controversy or you sell things as groundbreaking. These people can sometimes invest just for the bragging rights. Now, Roger Ailes got out of Broadway investing when his fortunes got low. When the economy was doing bad, he almost uh, lost it all at one point before he became part of Fox News, and he had to dump all that Broadway investing and theater investing out the door. And that goes back to my original thing. I think these things are only possible when things are doing well. So this coronavirus business, this Dow dropping, this oil dropping, all this stuff is what I'm saying. Like, things are going good. The 1% is doing well. The middle's getting bottomed out, whatever, but the 1% is doing well. And people have room to invest in these things, to prop up these influencers, do these ego boosting vanity projects or whatever. And HBO had Game of Thrones. They can throw money at influencers too because they're flush with money, and they want to they have room to invest in things that they hope will get them Emmy nominations and critical buzz and stuff. People in charge of HBO would like to say during my tenure we had this groundbreaking gay show or this groundbreaking black show. As long as the profits are taken care of, why not put that in your resume too? Makes you look uh, pretty good. But this is what's interesting, right? I had realized that it flopped, and I tweeted it. And Jeremy O'Harris, I think, searches his own mentions or mentions a slave play. Um, so I he came to my mentions and he says, "LOL, LOL, LOL, LOL. I have decided to ignore most of this, but I've done multiple threads about this. We actively made our tickets cheaper because the average ticket price for a play shouldn't be $115. That's idiotic. We didn't do this play to make money, but to change audiences." Now, that I find pretty interesting. He said, "We didn't do this play to make money. We did it to change audiences." Now, one of two things. Either that's not true, and this is just saving face, or it is true, which is kind of interesting because then you're kind of admitting that you can't move units, you can't sell things. Like, you can't say it's because of race, because down the street, Ain't Too Proud, the Temptation show, which is um about the Temptations, um sells through every night, is written by a black female playwright. So there's a black woman who's writing a Broadway musical that is selling out the wazoo and getting extended continuously, that gets a fraction of this buzz, right? So, and it has a disproportionately black audience. Color Purple had a disproportionately black audience on Broadway, and I attended Slave Play off Broadway. I saw pictures of the audience on Broadway, and it looked as white as any other audience. So I don't know what he was talking about. I think there's other shows like Color Purple and um, Ain't Too Proud probably got a disproportionately higher amount of black people than this show did. So it's funny he's saying that he did it to change, save. Like, two things are true. Like, two things are possible. Either he's telling the truth that this is why they did it, but it kind of exposes the influencer industrial complex as a house of cards, like, like that is built on spectacle and hot air balloons of clout and nothing else. Um, or he's lying and is saving face, which is embarrassing too. And somebody you could see did this in response to him saying, "We didn't do this play to make money," and they said, "No, shut the fuck up." Like what are you saying? But what became interesting was this really did become the talking point going forward. All of a sudden, all you could hear was, "Hey guys, the play was never meant to make money." So I started doing long threads, and a lot of these long threads really, and a lot of these talking points really started gathering up steam when I started posting the links to Broadway.com and breaking down how this thing was all comp tickets and hot air and fake puff pieces. You know what I'm saying? So then New York Times did a follow up thing. The first one was, "Is Broadway ready for slave play?" The new one became same title, but backwards, where was Broadway ready for slave play? And now I think they were forced to now admit that it flopped and they couldn't pretend anymore. So now the splaining started. Is The article is written by two journalists who one is a woman, one is of color, and the article says slave play was never going to be an easy sell on Broadway. Um, but you know, finishes 19-week run with great critical acclaim. Um, um, it, but not much controversy. One edgy talkback accepted, and I'm going to talk about that so-called talkback, right? It did not recoup its $3.9 million capitalization, so it was technically not a hit. I think the word is a flop, right? But you see what they're trying to say? They didn't say it's a flop. They said it's technically not a hit. So this is the goalpost moving. But the producers said they were pleased with how well it did do and noted that over 100,000 people saw it over the course of its run. And it adds in parentheses, very few plays recouped their costs on Broadway. Um, as the show, which discounted tickets and held special events to attract younger and more diverse audiences, became the buzziest of the fall, drawing the likes of Rihanna, Donald Glover, and Harry Styles. And like Kenny has said in the show before, you can't eat attention. Like, who cares? So it got the buzz, but nobody went. But I mean, who knows? They're gonna use this to try to make it fail upwards into a movie. I bet you a movie's gonna come anyway. Um, if the economy doesn't tank. Um, if the economy tanks, it'll take a while. But when the economy comes back and they're throwing money at wasted things again, they'll come back. They did a bunch of interviews with people talking about how pleased they were, um, and all the different ways they moved the goalpost. Like, hey, 30% of our audience was new to Broadway, never went. Oh, there were a lot of black and brown people in the mezzanine, and they have specifically, and all the pictures I saw, none of them looked like this, but they tried to find the most diverse picture they could to try to make it seem like it had diverse audiences. And even this is still very white. And when you look at social media and look up the hashtags and look at the pictures on Instagram, the audiences were still overwhelmingly white. They did not look like this. They tried to selectively isolate the audience to make it look um, more diverse than it was. But I find that kind of interesting how everything kind of changed in the dialogue around it, and then they made the rounds with these new talking points. So again, basically, I was right, even though I got gaslit. I was right. The New York Post guy, even though they dragged him as a racist and tore him to shreds on social media, and their whole social justice influencer journalist clique joined in, he was right. They slandered that man for nothing. They slandered that man for nothing. And this is Wall Street Journal. They did a thing in the Wall Street Journal. Slave play producers say they diversified Broadway audience. Production falls short of recouping investment, but accomplishes goal of attracting new theater goers. Which, again, one of two things: either that really is the goal, but if it was, they weren't saying that up front. And did the investors know that? And what does that mean about the power of the influencers? You know, if they don't even make profitability a goal from the jump, and second, are people going to be satisfied with that when people's pockets are tight, when even rich people have to tighten their belts? You know what I mean? The same way Roger Ailes stopped investing in theater when he was in trouble, before he became the head of Fox. Is that sustainable? Like, you're gonna need a good economy to have people flushing money down on vanity pieces. And also, here's something else. Why is that a good goal? Like, what is it about Broadway theater that is so necessary for black and brown people that you are making yourself into some kind of social justice ideologue? Like, it's not healthcare, it's not education, it's not money in the pocket, it's Broadway. Why are you acting like you're some hero for bringing more black and brown people to the theater, which you really didn't do? But even if you did do it, why does that make you a hero? Like, there's something kind of racist about that. I feel like there's this idea that here are these unwashed masses. Here's these, like, the main thing afflicting these poor black and brown people is that they don't get a chance to go to Broadway and be elbow to elbow with white people and get that good white culture. And it's this idea. It's like those people who back in the day, their biggest concern was getting black kids into white schools, but not improving the black schools and making the black schools better. And this idea that somehow by osmosis or mere exposure, what black people need most, what black kids need most, is to be around white kids. Like, excellence is something that white people just naturally have, and it's contagious. And just let the black kids around white kids, and that's the most important thing they need. Like even if you did accomplish that, like, how does that help anybody? Like now when this coronavirus is hitting, and we're predicting 30% of unemployment when it's all said and done, and black unemployment is double usually what white unemployment is. So it's going to be probably more than half black people unemployed if this really happens. Like, how is having been exposed to Broadway once or twice um, going to be tangible help in your life? How many more Broadway shows are you going to be able to go to when you're unemployed? Like, what? Like, there's something just so insulting about this idea that we desperately have to get black people uh, into white audiences to see things that white people are interested in, because slave plays for white people. It's something that white people are interested in, and it's primarily for them. And yeah, I just find that to be a stupid goalpost to move it to. Like, that this is your, and a kind of low key self hating and racist one. Like nobody says, hey, we have to get white people into the Beacon Theater to watch these gospel plays. Like, nobody ever talks talks like being immersed in an audience of black people, seeing things that black people want to see, is helping the white people. If anything, they make fun of things like Tyler Perry and gospel plays. So whatever. But yeah, so it one thing that ended up happening was I'm gonna talk about this other thing. This talk back Tammy, right? Um there was this thing that happened. And there's something else that I want to talk about with the influential complex, right? Including social justice influencer. Um, Mario, in a recent episode, said this. Mario said, "Hey, the original grandfather of the mother of these influencers is Paris Hilton," and it didn't quite ring true to me, but it seemed kind of true. And I agreed, but I thought about it, and I'm like, no, she's not really the mother or father of these influencers. I'll tell you who the mother or the father of the influencers, or the grandfather of the influencers is. The modern influencer, the modern troll, is Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman is, I think, really um who the real father of the internet troll, the grandfather of the modern influencer is, where he was very big into the spectacle. And what was supposed to make him funny was that you didn't know what was real and what wasn't real. Like, if you look at Andy Kaufman's actual jokes, like setup, premise, story, punchline, they weren't particularly good. Like, it's weird. Like, I kind of like Andy Kaufman, but I also think he's kind of overrated, and I hate what he did to a lot of comedy and discourse, because he kind of made so much comedy and discourse, and the internet really um is made for this kind of thing, where trolling kind of became more important than being uh, legitimately funny. And fooling people became its own art. And to be honest, I think it's easy to fool people. Like, it's not that hard because what are you saying when you fool an audience, right? When you fool an audience, you're penalizing the audience for trusting you. So then what are you really saying? Like, what you're saying is, if you're showing the audience is stupid, then what you're low-key saying is the audience is stupid for trusting you. That's what you're saying. Like, the audience, like, you should be flattered that the audience trusts you. So it's like, because the audience is trusting enough to take you at face value and listen to what you say, and you squander that trust by lying to them, and because they're not expecting you to lie to them, because it's not a scenario where lying should be expected, or no one expects a normal healthy person to tell a lie to them, then of course you're going to fool them, especially in the 70s before this type of stuff was normalized. It's really easy to do. It's not the hardest thing to do to fool people. So he would do these stunts all the time, like pretend he was going insane and was chasing the wrestling belt and wrestle a woman and do all these stunts and do all these things. And one thing that was interesting was, like, the stunts, just like now, they got a lot of attention, a lot of buzz, a lot of insiders and famous people and other comedians liked it. The same other influencers like all these stunts, but they had to cancel the wrestling storyline because it just wasn't really selling or doing well. Like, people remember it fondly, and and it fooled a lot of people. And Andy Kaufman really committed to the bit, and it was funny once you know the joke. But I mean, think of any practical joke that you do where you're in on the joke, and you see someone else doing the practical joke, and you laugh at the other guy being fooled. But it's only funny because you're in on the joke. And but that's what a lot of this influencing is doing now, and it's bled into public relations, but they just make stunts, and they rig the stunts themselves. You see it with these fake controversies where they make a lady Ghostbusters, and then they take one or two or a handful of people who said sexist things and be like, "Oh my God, look at all these sexists! You better go watch this movie to stick it to the angry white men." And you do all these like fake stunts, and some of these people, I think, actually make the sexist comments themselves just to create the spectacles, and then a bunch of other people write articles about how we have to go reality to see Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman or s- the new Star Wars trilogy to stick it to the racists who are like exaggeration themselves. But yeah, like, there's a lot of trolling, a lot of stunts, and I think Andy Kaufman is the father. And I'm saying this for a reason, to tie it into slave play, right? This thing happened in slave play, and Jeremy O'Harris tweeted about it, and he made a big thing about it. He wouldn't shut up about it. He called it Talk Back Tammy. And I think he's a very online guy, internet connected guy. So he saw all these racist white women who were getting accused of stuff. All these racist white women getting accused of stuff, and they were getting like clever nicknames like Corner Store Carolyn or Picnic Patty and all this stuff. So suddenly, in the midst of this flopping thing that he has to keep doing new stunts for and new talking points. Um, One of the things that happened before it was exposed as a flop was he wouldn't stop talking about this woman interrupted slave play Q&A to complain the show was racist against white people. And this clip went viral. And you see it got 368 comments and whatever. And it said, slave play, Jeremy O'Harris's complex and thoughtful play, which the New York Times called, still trying to push the talking points, one of the most pro- one of the best and most provocative new works to show up on Broadway in years, has garnered rave reviews and some controversy before it even premiered on Broadway. This show is funny, witty, outrageous, and as Harris has discussed previously, can be uncomfortable for white audiences. especially for one woman who interrupted a Q&A with Harris following a performance last Friday. According to witness, the woman, whom Harris has nicknamed Talkback Tammy on Twitter, stood up from her seat and loudly interrupted the Q&A just as it was finishing up. She accused the queer black playwright of being racist against white people. At one point, she complained she didn't want to hear that white people were the plague all the time. During her diatribe, which lasted for several minutes, she reportedly said she had been a victim of rape, false arrest, having her children taken away, and being told as a single woman she's not good enough to fucking raise them. She asked Harris, "How the fuck am I not a fucking marginalized member of this goddamn society?" And he responded, "I never said you aren't, blah, blah, blah." And then he posted a video of it on his Twitter, and he said, "I'm gonna tell my kids this was the blind side," which is he was taking a meme where you take a picture of one thing and then say, "I'm gonna tell my kids it was this thing," you know. So he's always plugged into virality, and he makes his thing into a meme, and other people started jumping in. You see a bunch of blue checks. This guy Adam B. Kushner, you know, and he starts spreading it too. I just saw the amazing slave play by Jeremy O. Harris, and the audience member jumped up and accused him of being racist against white people. Clips in the thread, hashtag, and then a bunch of other people started talking about it. BuzzFeed reported on it. Um, this other guy, David Castillo, tweeted about it saying, shout out to Slave Play and Jerry O. Harris. Now I really want to watch this. And they posted it because dunking on um unwoke white women and white feminists is like very trendy in social justice circles. And you can see all like the buzz that it generated. And then Jeremy O. Harris followed up with this a day later or so. Talkback Tammy literally came in today and asked to speak to our general manager. And that's another a recurring joke on the internet about white women asking to talk to the managers and stuff. And I'm gonna be honest, I think he made it up. I don't think it's true. I think he planted that person there. I think it's an Andy Kaufman-esque thing. And then I think even if he didn't plant that person there, if by some miracle that person was real, he just ran with it and exaggerated it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did the follow-up uh, letter or whatever, or he at least weaponized it in an Andy Kaufman-esque way. Because I think that's by far the minority. It's not that huge a deal. And a play like that is going to attract mentally ill people anyway. So it's inevitable that something like that would happen. But yeah, so I think Andy Kaufman is the real father of all of this stuff. But this is the last thing that I want to say about this. Then I'm going to answer some questions in the comments because some people ask questions. I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to answer your questions. Um, Here is something else that happened. I found very, very interesting. Right? Uh, Manu went to said he pulled a Jussie. I'm not saying he pulled a Jussie, but I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. I don't want to say pull a Jussie because what Jussie did was like way over the top. But that I think is part of the Andy Kaufman-esque thing, this thing of spectacle as replacement for like reality as performance art. I think the Jussie thing is very Andy Kaufman-esque in a way too, even though it wasn't technically comedy. I mean, it kind of became a comedy. But yeah, I think Andy Kaufman really predicted a lot of this stuff for better or worse. And I think we really need to reevaluate Andy Kaufman. Yeah, if you just go on Twitter and like see like Instagram and Twitter comedians and how many social and media comedians just rely on deliberately misleading audiences as the humor and like fake announcements and stuff, right? But anyway, this is the last thing I wanted to share. Um Slave play author Jeremy O. Harris signs 2-year HBO deal developing pilot. So he basically, um, what he did basically tanked. Didn't make any money. He got like 20,000 extra Instagram followers and who knows how many Twitter followers off of it, and he failed upwards into an HBO deal. Um, And I think that's the real trade-off in this influencer industrial complex. Like it doesn't benefit anybody but the influencer until the influencer's luck eventually runs out, which I think kind of ends up happening. They get elevated to enough of a platform where um, the failure is too spectacular to condone. But yeah, I mean, how do you like flop get to sell it as a win, and then on top of that you get a deal off of it, right? So let's see what this deal is. He gets a 2-year HBO deal. One thing about HBO is you don't really have to get ratings like you do on network TV, because on HBO your thing is they don't rely on ratings like that and network advertisers. What they rely is subscriber counts, right? So as long as they have subscribers, they can kind of as long as the subscriber count is high, they're making their money. They can kind of afford to like blow money on prestige projects and critical buzz, and being tastemakers. And especially in light of when they had something like Game of Thrones there to make money off of, making money off of Game of Thrones gives you a lot of room to experiment and stuff. Just like a good economy gives people room to invest in a play that has a lot of buzz and is supposedly groundbreaking, but doesn't actually move tickets. Like, I'm very curious if with this coronavirus fallout, with this stock market crash fallout, with the spike in unemployment, what happens if a lot of people start canceling their HBO subscriptions? Too many people are unemployed. They start pirating everything. People don't have money to spend on HBO. Are deals like this gonna keep happening? Is this gonna be part of the influencer bubble that's gonna disappear? Right? I think so. But slave play playwright Jeremy O. Harris has entered a 2-year overall deal with HBO and is developing an untitled pilot as well as returning to HBO series Euphoria as a co-producer. So he was a consultant on Euphoria, and he got promoted to a co-producer. I suspect Euphoria doesn't have high ratings either. I know it's created by a friend of his from, I believe, from Yale. He knows the guy, so they're watching each other's backs, which is what I think friends should do, and influencers do in general to each other. Um, Jeremy is a singular talent whose groundbreaking work in the theatrical space has already revolutionized Broadway. And let me ask you, what ground did he break, and how did he revolutionize Broadway? Like, how did he revolutionize it? He didn't get more black people. Like that's one thing like influencers do a lot too, especially social justice ones, like the black and the queer ones and the gay ones and the feminist ones. They try to erase everything created before to make everything they do more groundbreaking than it is. Like, there was nothing groundbreaking about this play. It's like, except maybe in tackiness. But even that, I mean, I don't know. There's plenty of hit black Broadway plays that have attracted bigger black audiences. Some of them created by black people, some of them created by white people, but they were at least have black subject matter. I mean, what ground is you breaking that August Wilson didn't break, that Pearly didn't break, that Dreamgirls didn't break, that Color Purple didn't break? Like, what? I don't get it. This But that's the big thing. You have to exaggerate how regressive the past was to overemphasize how groundbreaking you are. That's a very common thing with specifically social justice influencers. So basically, um, they say, um, he says, since first embarking on a theater career, I've known that TV/film would be most likely the only space where I could build a livelihood for myself, like many other playwrights before me, Harris said in a statement today. And this is what I was saying about influencers. They don't really have a commitment to any career. They just jump from things to things. So he's saying from the time he embarked on a theater career, he was doing it with his eyes on TV and film. Like, not really with an idea of being the world's best playwright. It was like it was the best way to spin to get into TV and film, right? And then he validates it by saying, like many of the playwrights before me, like, trying to make it seem like, hey, this is what's been done before me, which I think is a way to normalize his mercenary nature. He said, yet I want to make sure that any company I worked with in that space recognize the importance of maintaining a delicate ecology of theater in these times. So um the H- to know that HBO also believe in that vision gives me immense hope for the future of both industries. So they gave him a deal where he gets to become a, a mover and shaker in theater and fund theater projects, but also make deals for them. And the HBO announcement said that Harris's untitled pilot will be based on his Yale drama graduate thesis. Though the subject matter was not indicated, I'm sure it's going to be a black gay guy with an older white guy, like everything else he does. About being with white people and and his sexual resentment politics. Um, Previous reports describe Harris's thesis play Yale, a documentary of my time here at Yale and about his Ivy League education. So again, he can't write about anything but himself and uh, his experiences. I'm sure that Ivy League alienation is going to have to do with a lot of sexual alienation from white people again. Um, he'll be an executive producer on the Untitled project. Um, and yeah, basically, one of the reasons, right? His theater deal is going to have him. The deal includes this: a discretionary fund that Harris can use for new theatrical projects, which he will commission, enhance, and produce for himself and others. So he's going to be he's going to get some money that's going to use to um cr- support other playwrights. So this is what I think is going to happen, right? He's going to use this discretionary fund. He's going to use the discretionary fund to make a kind of influencer mafia, right? So this is where he gets to pay back all these influencer writers and think piecers and bloggers who have been supporting him who want to break in. Um, he breaks into HBO, making these TV shows and whatever that no one's gonna watch and no one has to watch because HBO is not really doing them for the viewership. They already have the subscribers. They're doing this as vanity projects and to up their cool quotient and make HBO look cool and whatever. I mean, as long as the economy is doing good, HBO will keep doing that. If the economy flops, HBO takes a hit in real tangible income. We'll see how much patience they have for this stuff. But for now, so far, so good. What Harris gets in the meantime, he gets a discretionary fund. That discretionary fund he gets to use to create a bunch of stuff on Broadway. He creates it on Broadway. And now he has a kind of tastemaker mafia, and he's the godfather of it. A bunch of influencers that people are gonna have to kiss his ass more than ever because now he has money to get things done. And he can also pay back favors. He can do a lot of quid pro quo. And there's just going to be a even bigger expansion of this type of influencer mafia wing of Broadway, as he curates and produces these plays. And he gets, as someone who, seems to be very much a climber, he gets to solidify his status as someone it's like the Mean Girls, it's like he's gonna have the hot table to sit at with this HBO money, this HBO connection, and he gets to say, "You can't sit with us. You can sit with us," to whoever he wants, and he gets to peddle and exchange influence. Because I think at the end of the day, none of this is really about making money for his investors, making money for his patrons, making money for whatever, but making money for himself, and more importantly, expanding his sphere of influence and clout and you know whatever. So yeah, I think failing upwards is going to be a big thing. But to answer the question that I set out to answer with, I think the reason why these companies are investing in this stuff is because times are good, money is good, the money's taken care of elsewhere. And I think in the weeks to months to come, as people lose disposable income, as rich people have to tighten their belts because their portfolios are in the tank, oil and the Dow is down, we're going to see a short term crash in the influencer industrial bubble. So, someone asked, I Sound Info asked, can you talk about, can you talk a little bit about how, if at all, this is different from arguments about hip hop being about who's better according to who sells the most? I mean, I think it's a good question. I think hip hop's in the same way now, where like influencers wouldn't really work if there weren't people who bought into their thing on some level, even if the people who buy into them won't spend money on shit. You know what I'm saying? And won't actually buy anything. Because they're just people who just are online all day, just looking for distractions from their boring lives. I mean, they do have a way of getting people to engage with them, at least online. And the reason influencers work with their pictures of a glamorous life that they may or may not really be living on Instagram all the time, their constant brunches, their Instagram live stories, or the Snapchat stories of what fabulous thing they're doing today is there is out there a lot of people who judge you based on your apparent clout about how you're doing, and you winning to a lot of these people is proof that your product is good. Like I remember I was complaining about Terry Richardson being a hack photographer and just a product of nepotism and cronyism, and that he's just a racist misogynist hack who doesn't do good pictures and who people just hire because other celebrities hire him. And um he works for Vice, which at the time Vice was very hip and edgy, and there was this guy who was saying, yeah, but he's the man, he's winning. So if he was bad, how would be winning like that? And to this guy, he couldn't separate the fact that he had clout and was exposed and was being talked about from his quality and whether he deserved to be there. And I was like, he's winning because it's nepotism and cronyism, and he's a white male, and he just politics and climbs, and he knows like the right people. Like one has nothing to do with the other, but the guy could not separate this from the fact. And the truth is, probably most of his so-called fans were just other people like this guy. There's like I'm gonna tell a story. There was this guy once, right? He was kind of a predator in the leftist social justice space, right? And what this guy did that was really interesting. This is a true story, but he was like a predator in like the leftist space, and he would say a bunch of things about himself, like he was non-binary and all these buzzwords that made him seem like um very cool and unthreatening and socially woke and stuff. And I couldn't he followed me, and I didn't really know much about him, right? But he followed me out of the blue. I didn't really get it. And a lot of people follow me. I don't care. Follow me on Twitter. But and they might have really been non-binary. I don't know. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't want to speculate. But this person one day sent me a DM on Twitter and saying, "Hey, what's going on? I'm in town. Um, I'm hanging out with so and so, who was a friend of mine, um, who is very popular on Twitter, much more popular than I am, right? And we're drinking at this bar, and he named the bar, and they named the bar, and the bar was down the street from my house. And it's like, why don't you come down and check it out? So I was like, this is weird. I don't want to go by myself in case this is some weird fan who I go and nobody's there. And and at the time, I don't know if it was a guy or a girl or whatever, because the picture was not of their own face, it was of a celebrity. And I'm like, what if it ends up being like some kind of girl or something? And then the girl's alone with me in the bar, and then, you know, suddenly it comes out I went to meet um some girl or something, and some weird like Me Too thing happened. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but but I was like, if this person I know is vouching for them, if this person knows them, they must be pretty cool. Like, so I said, let me invite my wife. Let me bring my wife, so I won't get in trouble if it doesn't end up being a girl, or whatever. Because it was so close to my house, it was 3 blocks away, and I like the person's tweets. Person's tweets were okay, and they had a lot of followers, so they weren't like just a kind of nobody with no followers and a brand new account. So, like, I started thinking with the social proofing, okay, my friend knows them, they have a lot of followers, they have decent tweets, whatever. So I go down to the bar with my wife. I said, look, I have no idea what to expect. We get there. Everybody I know off the internet in that uh, left sphere, social sphere space is there. And I'm like, whoa, all these podcasters are here, all these people I know, all these socialists, all these hosts, all these journalists. Like, okay, so this is like an event, right? So I go there, DSA people are there, people who work for Jacobin are there, and I finally see the person. This person ends up being a male of color. We introduce, we talk, and then I was like, okay, I guess I have nothing to worry about. And I started thinking, wow, this person is super social proof. This person knows everybody. What was I worried about? I was so silly, and I let my guard down. So I let my guard down and I'm talking to the person. And then one of the things that I said to the person, they were telling me, oh, yeah, I have Instagram too. It's a food Instagram, it's pretty popular. You should follow that. And, you know, I was like, oh, so you have Instagram too? And I said, how long have you been on Twitter? Because this person had a huge amount of Twitter followers, like way more than me. And then he said, I've only been on Twitter for like a short time, couple of months. And I was like, whoa, you've been on Twitter a couple of months? And bear with me, the story's going somewhere. I know it's getting a little bit long, but it's going somewhere. It's going somewhere good. I was like, you've been on Twitter for that short a time. You have that many followers. That's really kind of bizarre. Like, how did you do it? When I asked how did you do it, they kind of got uncomfortable. They changed the subject, right? I found out later they had some kind of spreadsheet and they were very calculating about. They're trying to find the most popular Twitter people, and they had this whole um style of engineering clout. It was kind of like the character Eve from All About Eve. Like, they kind of picked the space that they want to climb to, and they just targeted like influential people, and then just got like social proofing. It came out that they had like um influencing strategies and spreadsheets and stuff. Like, it was that serious, and that's kind of how they got super popular. And this is what was really really interesting. They were later outed as like a sexual predator, and it got like Me Too, and it was like really nasty stuff. It was like really bad stuff. And one of the things they kind of used was like the whole non-binary status as a way to kind of get people's guards down, and they were like targeting a lot of young or naive girls, like very young girls, in political spaces, and being very sexually aggressive or sexually manipulative with them, and also using their social proofing and their followers as a way to kind of get a sense of authority. Like, like a lot of these girls were kind of embarrassed or felt weird to say no, or felt like we kind of felt gaslit because, okay, this person wouldn't be co-signed by so many people and be so big, without, and be like a creep, like, whatever. And then a lot of them felt kind of gross after, whatever happened. It all came out, and a lot of people started sharing stories about how this person was very predatory. And some people speculated this person might not even be really non-binary, because they kind of presented just like a male, and uh there was no real anything that really evidence any real commitment to being non-binary. So then I got kind of curious, and I started asking people. I was like, wow, um imagine I had this person on the podcast, or imagine, like, I started kind of getting a griftery vibe from this person. So I ended up not really messing with them, and they would get in my DM sometimes and try to um talk me into doing things like, hey, meet this person, you should work with this person, or why don't you meet this person, and like trying to ingratiate themselves by introducing me to other people they knew, and trying to show like, hey, I'm a connector, I'm an influencer. This person ended up influencing his way in a short amount of time to getting like a writing job, proposed TV show, even getting in the writers' room just off of the clout, um, and had this like following out of nowhere. And like I found out later, it was all like calculated just to spin off into other things, right? So just to Gannon Spike says, I think I know what he's talking about. You probably do. It's not like the most hidden story, right? So yeah, they were spinning it off into all these other things, right? And I started getting a vibe, but because I had no proof of anything, it was just my instinct. I never really did anything with this person, but I'll talk to some people. I'm like, what do you know about this person? And this was really interesting. I got curious to the point. This is before the sexual harassment thing came out. I started asking around. I started thinking, asking everyone there, how do you know this person? Why were you there that night when they were at the bar? And they all came for the same reason I did, which is the person that they name dropped. They all thought if she's down with them, they can't be that bad. So, when I showed up, I started thinking, oh, this guy is a mover and shaker. They've got all these people here. They must be okay. I can trust them. These people wouldn't co-sign them. I started asking everybody I knew who was there one by one, um, why were you there? And they were all like, I didn't really know them either. I just went because they name dropped that person. And then when I saw everyone else there, I thought, oh, they must be cool. So it's incredibly like nefarious, because I don't think he even knew very well that first person that he invited. I think they got that first person to come. They dropped their name. After they dropped their name, like, okay, I got one. Once I get the one, I'm gonna go around everywhere and just name drop this one person. So I'm sure that first person that they name dropped just did it on a whim, or you know maybe was trusting or whatever. And then I think what they might have done was this: they might have told that person, hey, I've got a bunch of people coming out, I'm in town for the week, we follow each other, we chat sometimes, do you want to come? But they might not have had anybody yet. This person accepts. They're like, damn, I got a tangible name now. Now that I have this tangible name, I'm going to use that name to invite everybody else. All of us came over. None of us knew this person. All of us thought they're kind of weird, but everyone else is here and we all know them. So maybe I'm the weird one for being weirded out. And I was like, damn, that's incredible. Like, because it was after that he was able to get even more popular, get more opportunities, and eventually make their way into getting that writing staff job. And if they never got outed for using their clout to be a sex pest, who knows where they could be now? They could be on a Bernie Sanders campaign. You never know. Like they could be in politics. They could be on a HBO show. You know, and to bring it back to Terry Richardson, like I don't want to make myself immune to it. Like, oh, everyone else is stupid. I'm so savvy. Like I want to give an example using myself of how I'm not immune to it, but that's social proofing thing. When you think everyone else is into something, when everybody thinks when you create the impression that everyone else who's cool is into something, it's like the emperor's new clothes. It's a cliched example, but the emperor's new clothes, everyone thought everybody else liked something, so they all liked it, but none of them really liked it. I think that's kind of what happens, and it happens with the media can create the impression that this thing is super social proofed, and then everyone else starts liking it because they think everyone else likes it, not knowing that everyone else that they're following is only doing it because they think everyone else likes it, and then you get these comment sections in answer to your question and hip hop threads of people like, "Yo, um, this rapper is better than that rapper because uh, he has more girls. He has better cars. How many hits does this rapper have? Like, this person wins the rap beef because this other person, uh, this person has a Tesla and this other person, drives a Honda Accord. Like they don't even talk about like lyrics anymore. Yeah, I mean that's that. Unless anybody has any other questions, I think that's it for me. I'm gonna go eat my coronavirus quarantine food, whatever I have left, because I have not been out to the supermarket. Uh, iSign Info said FOMO, fear of missing out. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Everybody comment, like, subscribe, comment, like, subscribe. We want to get this thing to 1,000, and the more followers we get. Oh, and share. That's important word. Share, 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 share. If you like these things, share them, share them, share them, and get those people to comment, like, and subscribe because we want to get to 1,000. Once we get to 1,000, we're gonna start doing regular live streams, same time, same day of the week. Catching up on a lot of content today. So after this live stream, I'm gonna start doing back podcast episodes and stuff. A lot of our guests have kind of canceled all at once. That's why we kind of fell behind because I think everybody's in their own quarantine funk, and it's made a bunch of our guests back out. But we're gonna get back on track, even if we have to do a lot of solo episodes. So if you're a patron, stay subscribed. This last week of March, a lot of episodes are going to come out. We already have 2 being edited as we speak. And thanks everybody for coming out. Galen Spikes, Killster619. Thanks for um coming out. Manu12, Yakub, iSound Info, Gold Link, 2008 B Scott, Champagne Communist, Sona Management, who said he wasn't going to become a patron because I have a friend who's a cop. Uh, Saeed FB, PC, everyone else. Thank y'all. Love all y'all. Appreciate it. And comment, like, subscribe. Go to patreon.com/champagne sharks and share with your friends. Peace.